Hi there, I'm Erin, and let's talk about all the books that I read in April. Alright, so here is my stack of the books that I read this month. We're mainly going to focus on the top two because if you hadn't noticed, the bottom three are books that are very popular. You may have already read them, you may have watched the movies multiple times. You may be reading them and then also watching the movies multiple times. But I just feel like I don't need to get too deep with them because they are so popular, so we'll just briefly discuss them and then be on our way. So yeah, let's start with the first book that I read this month, and that is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellers. I rated this book a 4 out of 5. I was teetering with a 3 or a 4, so it probably lands somewhere near like 3.5, 3.75. Okay, so just a bit of a summary for you. This story follows the aftermath of Cleo and Frank's impulsive marriage. The story centers around them, but is also told through their friends and family who are also impacted. Cleo is a 24-year-old British artist who is living in New York City and needs a green card to stay there. And she meets Frank after a New Year's Eve party, and he is like 20 years older than her, and they just have this instant spark and decide to get married like 6 months after meeting. So they are both deep into the art, party, chaotic scene of New York City in 2007. So they're really wrapped up in a lot of drugs and alcohol. And so after this marriage, everything starts to crack, and the issues between the characters and issues within the characters themselves just start to build and build and build until it all ruptures. Overall, I really enjoyed Coco Mellers' writing. I think this is her debut book, so I definitely will read more of hers in the future, and that's always a good thing. But I was just shocked that I actually liked a majority of these characters, and the ones that I didn't like, I knew I was supposed to not like them. They were all just really well-rounded, really fleshed out, and all so different that it amazes me that this one person can write so many different characters in the same scene, in the same city, and build all these different types of relationships between them all in one book. See what I mean? Why I have to give it a 4 stars? Like, it was a really good book. So my favorite characters in here were Eleanor and Santiago. I loved Eleanor because she was hilarious. She was written as a first person, running thoughts, internal dialogue type of style. And I literally laughed out loud at almost everything she said. I thought she was just so funny and witty. And yeah, I could definitely reread this book just for her chapters alone. I love Santiago because he was a romantic. He was a really good friend to both Cleo and Frank and expressed his love through food. And his passages were just so beautiful to read. And that's why those two are my favorites. So since I read this a little bit ago, I had to remind myself how I thought about it, what happened in the book, and I wanted to do a little bit more research because I had the big question of why is Cleopatra and Frankenstein titled Cleopatra and Frankenstein? So I found a video of Coco Mellers being interviewed, and she said that it's titled the way it is because it's about the masks that these characters wear and the personas that they take on to be loved. So I found that very interesting and very true to what I read about all these characters. I'm going to read you some passages because the writing is just too beautiful not to share. And this is one of Santiago's chapters, obviously in his perspective. It says, "Everybody's got a hungry heart. The trick is to learn when you're eating to fill the heart instead of the stomach. Feeding the stomach," she said, "is easy. That's just diet. It's learning how to feed the heart that's hard." And this was about, I believe, a weight loss journey. And here's another one. It's in the perspective of Frank. And it says, "Her laugh was the sound of a slot machine jackpot, a soda can cracking open, fairground music in the distance, a Corvette engine coming to life, 1,000 hands applauding all at once. It was one of those truly beautiful sounds." Oh my goodness, that's just like poetry. Anyways, great book. I recommend it. And that's all I have to say. On to the next. Okay, so this one was dense. Very dense. I probably won't be able to cover every single thing in here, but that's what other book review videos are for, right? Right. So this is Pod by Laline Paul, and it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And I just thought the inside summary was very intriguing. However, I will say that the inside summary is very misleading because there's a lot more packed in this book than just what's described. So yeah, let me give you a summary, hopefully with no spoilers. If so, I'm sorry. So I had originally thought that this book would be about one dolphin's adventures on her own. when actually it follows a couple different species. And the story is all leading up to the great spawning of the ocean. It's basically a big moment of reproduction and just full of life for every species in the ocean. So the story begins with E, who is a partially deaf spinner dolphin. And she feels like an outsider from her pod because she can't hear the music of the ocean that they all hear. She actually hears the song of the rorqual whale, which her pod ignores. And after tragedy strikes her pod, she forces herself to leave and just be on her own in the middle of the ocean. We then shift to the narrative of the rorqual whale, who is developing his own song from his own experiences. His kind is not known to sing such brutality and tragedy that it forces him to live on his own. But he still feels a very strong responsibility to get this message out to other species for what's to come. And then it shifts to a third narrative. I'm assuming this is all happening simultaneously, but we learn about a bottlenose dolphin named Debbie, who is the wife of the chief dolphin in their pod. And she is having to navigate all of these politics and the brutality of the pod, maintaining her status, keeping her son safe. And then the other bottlenose dolphin we get is named Google, and he was actually born in captivity and is used in the military, which I never knew was a thing. I actually Googled it, and it's pretty shocking, honestly. I did not know they did this. So he spent his entire life in a small cage, training for what seems to be one mission that he wasn't supposed to come back from. He does survive, so he also has to make his way on his own, understand what his past was and what is now his future. And then the last perspective we get is of a wrasse fish who has gone through a severe event in his life, major trauma, and was uprooted from his home, his coral reef, and has to find somewhere new to live. So all of these stories merge at different parts in the book, but you can tell, like I said before, that they're all waiting for this big moment in the ocean. It all comes together at the end, and the message is clear without actually hitting you on the head with it. There are moments in this book where you are so connected to the character that you feel exactly what they feel. You feel confusion, you don't understand your surroundings because it doesn't look familiar. As someone on the outside, you start to piece together what these mammals and species are actually experiencing, and it really hits home with what you know the real world looks like. So, big stuff, but this book really teaches me about, you know, how much life and vastness, greatness the ocean is, and that we need to start protecting it. We need to stand up for it, and that's a lot for how small this book is. But yeah, I would recommend it, but just look up some trigger warnings and understand that you will kind of feel, sad isn't the word, but almost like depleted. This is actually happening, and this is what real animals and species experience because of humans. That's all. On to the next three, basically. So I told you before I'm not going to touch super in depth on these, but obviously they are the first three books in the Harry Potter series. We have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, The Chamber of Secrets, and The Prisoner of Azkaban. I grew up loving Harry Potter. I still remember reading the books for the first time, finishing the last book, and just going, oh wow, that was big. Obviously, I watch the movies more frequently than I read the books, so I thought it'd be a nice time in my life just to reread them, feel really nostalgic. I walk a lot in the spring, summer. You know, I walk a lot in the warmer months, and I didn't have any audiobooks to listen to. So while I'm holding up physical books, I did purchase and listen to the audiobooks, which I had never done before. One of the major things I love about reading or listening to these books is that you forget how much the movies had to leave out. Granted, these first two are pretty spot on to the movies. These two are in the running of just having to be my favorite. So my favorite part about the last one is when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are going through all of the different tricks and obstacles to get to the Sorcerer's Stone. My favorite one is Professor Snape's potion. I wish they would have kept that into the movie, or like at least the extended version, because that riddle is so cool, and like to try to decipher it yourself is, I don't know, just a cool moment. And I wish they would have, you know, kept that in without like doing like the flying keys. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I can't remember what my favorite part about the second one is. Gilderoy literally sucks. I hate him so much. I literally hated every single word that came out of his mouth. But also, like, How did the teachers not know he was a fake? A fraud? A phony? I really like it when they discover the opening of the Chamber of Secrets, like where it is in the bathroom, and he uses his parcel tongue to open it up. I just think it's a really cool moment. You know what? All right, fine. Now that I think about it, I'm gonna go back to my word, and I'm sorry I lied to you guys earlier. The third book is by far my favorite. I don't know why I ever question liking the second book over it. I think it's because I like the movie a lot. I like the third movie too, but like this book packs so much. Like we learned so much. We have the Time Turner, we have Hogsmeade, we have the Marauders map, we have the Marauders. What else do we have? We have Sirius Black. Oh my god, how could I even forget him? He should be number 1. He's my favorite character. And just we have that whole storyline of Harry's dad and like 3 best friends and the werewolves and learning about an animagus. I would love to turn into an animal. I think that'd be freaking cool. What I would be, I've not yet figured out, but it'd be a good question. This one just packs so much. I want to be a wizard in this book. The other 2 is just kind of like, oh yeah, it's cute and fun, but this I'm like, I would live for every single thing. Just like a wizarding town. God, that'd be cool. Those are just my thoughts because I haven't talked about these books in a long time. Overall, I'm having fun with it. I'm glad I'm reading them. I'm glad I now will have the audiobooks to my collection, so I don't even want to count how many different Harry Potter versions I have. But yeah, I had a lot of fun, really intense moments reading these top 2, especially the second book. But anyways, that's it. That's the video. But yeah, I hope you're having a good day, night, wherever you are. I'm sending you all the positive, warm, summery, spring vibes, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Bye.